joining. I'll adhere to the time. Thank you for the introductions. So Ben, if you could kindly go to the second page, that'll be great. Thank you. So as you heard, we're from the Commonwealth Secretariat, and what's the Commonwealth? It's a voluntary association made up of 56 equal and independent member states. Within the Secretariat team, we work across a wide range of social policy issues. And sport is a key deliverable for us and is part of what we do. The countries, we've been advocating for the power of sport and the use of sport to deliver national objectives, understanding that it's part of our foundational work that has been carried on from 2014 to present day. Ben, next slide, please. Ben, kindly change slide. Thank you so much. So part of this foundational work that's carried us through the years has been looking at where is sports placed. It's a multi-pronged approach. So we have vehicles and mechanisms that really advocate and amplify this work. There's the Commonwealth Advisory Body on Sport. There is the Commonwealth Youth Sport for Development and Peace Network. A very close partner of ours is the Commonwealth Sport. Commonwealth Sport is the Commonwealth Games delivery partner, and Sport and Dev. So really this helps us to tackle different cross-sectoral work. So internally, looking at how do we amplify that multi-sectoral approach to sport, that through education, health, youth, and gender mainstreaming. And externally, that's working with partners such as yourselves and to increase capacity building opportunities to advance our technical assistance offering to the 56 member countries and ensure that we are clear on the pulse of the sector. So if we kindly turn to the next slide, this kind of gives you a quick been doing from foundational work that has carried us through in terms of data evidence. This is a core part of our mandate, evidencing the contribution of sports to the SDGs. And this has not been without gaps in data and understanding the vicious cycle that, is there in terms of we understand the power of sports, we understand the impact of sports, but then if we're not collecting data or treating the data, then our baseline really provides us with a window of opportunity in this time to make sure that between now and 2030, we can achieve these goals. Next slide, kindly. And so how have we gone about this? In 2017, a global initiative was coordinated between the Commonwealth in close partnership with UNESCO to develop a common language, a common set of indicators, which is a measurement toolkit on the contribution of sports, physical activity, physical education, and to the SDGs. This sports and SDG indicators are now in continued use. We have our first global sports and SDG impact report together with partners, which is now available and is working towards showcasing that baseline. So much has changed within the sector between now and the last few years in terms of availability to data, the treatment of it, and the partnership and agreement in what must be measured and what needs to be invested in. Next slide, please. And so what you're looking at here is the full portrayal of where the indicators sit. There's population level set indicators, and there's also policy or high level regional indicators that are supporting the work of the Secretariat. And this is part of partnership. This is understanding that we can't measure everything, but different partners and different stakeholders are doing an incredible job in ensuring that all this is captured. Kindly share to the next slide. So if there's one thing I'd like you to remember from this presentation is that we focus on 3 Ps: producing policy, developing people, and measuring progress. Producing policy is key because then we are pushing the envelope. Developing people means that we are empowering each other, not just as a sector, but the wider public, to ensure that we understand truly what is the contribution of sports to Agenda 2030 and beyond. Measuring progress is the only way we reach that dial. And now over to you, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn. I hope everybody can hear me clearly. And yeah, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks to the Sport Development Network for the invitation. And it's amazing to see some of these projects come full circle. Many years ago, myself and Ian Lindsay, who will be speaking after us, helped develop the first set of model indicators. So it's amazing to see the Commonwealth taking this work forward in sport and sport for development. As introduced, my name is Ben Sanders. I'm coming to you from Cape Town, South Africa, the southern tip of Africa. And I will just complement Lynn's presentation and by providing a bit of a broader overview of sport for development, where it's been, where it is, and hopefully where it's going. So this approach has grown rapidly in the last 20 years. I think most of us are aware of this. And there's now a huge diversity of actors and approaches, from using football for, sexual and reproductive health to surfing for psychosocial support. This approach has been recognized quite widely by governments, public actors, private actors, but there's still a range of challenges we face in sport and sport for development. We know that this paragraph, often quoted, paragraph 37 in the SDGs 2030 Agenda for Action, lays out how sport can contribute. And I think it's really important, and this has been a bit of a rallying call for the sector, but I think we should also recognize that while sport is recognized here, there's no clear goals, targets, or indicators related to sport. This means there are no binding commitments to use sport. And I think in the next set of global goals, we should be more ambitious and try have a clearer indication of a political will to use and mandate sport as a tool for development in other sectors like health, education, and so on. The Kazan Action Plan is another very important policy document endorsed by the World Sports Ministers, and which provides quite a targeted approach to using sport, focusing on 10 SDGs and 36 targets, and that sport can contribute to, and it provides a blueprint from moving from policy to implementation. And as Lynn said, action 2 of this is measuring common indicators for sport and the SDGs. Unfortunately, and very worried. Sorry, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, all good, Ben.
Okay, sorry, I just got some back noise. Quite worryingly, we see really slow progress on the SDGs. We're 5 years away from 2030, and only 18% of targets have been met. The same percentage of targets, 18%, have actually regressed, which means they've gone backwards. And 17% have made moderate progress. A similar number have stagnated. So we've seen very little progress on the SDG targets, and we need to shift into overdrive, as the UN Secretary General says. And there's a very good chance that we won't meet many of these targets by 2030. And you can break them down by goal, and in certain goals we've achieved more than others. But of course, this is a very worrying scenario we're facing, which makes it even more critical to think about the ways in which sport can most robustly contribute to the SDGs and other priorities. I think it's also important to note that the SDGs and all these high-level commitments and policies are really important, but that a lot of the work done in sport for development has come by grassroots civil society actors, NGOs, working with very little, but doing a lot in all parts of the world, including in the global south. I think these really are the true heroes of the sector, and we need to ensure that not only does policy making filter down to these organizations and individuals, but their findings filter up and feed into global decision making and policy. And there's still too big a gap between policy and practice. There are a range of other challenges and opportunities, which I won't go into huge detail, but there's great inequity across regions, gender, race, disability, socioeconomic status in terms of sport for development, access to sport. There's a resourcing challenge, greater constraints than ever, given the global aid crisis that we are currently facing. And we published a call for articles on this on Sport and Dev. And there's a real risk that many sport for development organizations will not be able to continue in the current vein with such funding disruptions. There's a great diversity of initiatives, but a lack of coordination and collective impact. Despite our best intentions, North-driven, Anglo-centric, and neo-colonial approaches may cause an own goal in sport and sport for development, and limited understanding and robust research at scale on how sport can foster change. So it's really not a level playing field, and there's a lot we have to do to reshape sport to be more equal. The other thing is, does everyone even know what we're talking about? We assume everyone knows about the SDGs, the role of sport, but actually many people in the world don't know what the SDGs are. They don't know what the GAPA, Global Action Plan for Physical Activity is, or the UN Action Plan on Sport for Development and Peace. So again, bridging this divide between policy and practice. And we produced a guidebook on this, but all our tools and resources try to bridge this huge gap between policy and practice. And what we've seen is that it's really important to build capacity, and we've done some of this work with the Commonwealth. And this is really building the capacity of people to design, deliver, measure sport for development policies and programs, to raise funds, to advocate, and to contribute to real impact, and to do it across the world. So we need more capacity building and more knowledge production in the Global South as well. I spoke briefly about the measurement challenge, and I'm trying to go through this quickly just for the sake of time, but there is a question around the impact of sport for development sometimes. We know some programs work in some places sometimes, but there's a lack of rigorous research and monitoring at scale. So there's a gap between evidence and practice, although many actions, as Lynn highlighted, have taken steps to address this, and there is evidence of impact in some areas. We've been involved in a project which is doing a systematic review of systematic reviews, which highlighted that there again is some evidence of impact, but it does remain elusive at times, and the quality of research and methods assessing sport and sport for development could be improved. The dominance of English publications is a problem, as is the need to consider the historical context. So, you know, there's a lot of work we still have to do now, and this doesn't mean that a lot of good work hasn't been done and that we haven't come a long way. We have, but I think we need to continue being critical because we care and because we want to move the sector forward. Lynn talked about this action too, which has come a long way from developing common indicators to measure the contribution of physical education and physical activity at sport. And actually, this shows that there has been progress in some indicators, and there is some robust evidence to underpin why and how sport can be used. A good example, SDG 8 on 8.6 on reducing the number of youth not in employment, education, and training. So it's long been said that sport's an avenue for young people to move into employment, education, and training. But is there really evidence to back this up? And we look at the statistics from Europe, there is evidence to back this up. We see that the percentage of young people, which is the blue dot here, employed in these countries in the general overall population versus the percentage employed in sport. And it is almost double the percentage of young people aged 15 to 29 that are employed through sport than are employed in other sectors. So this shows sport can be a way to promote youth employment, education, training, not with data from one project or one place, but from across an entire continent. We see similar examples in Namibia, where the percentage of the workforce within the sport, fitness, and recreation sector has grown. We can use this to make policy decisions in relation to SDG 3 when we look at levels of physical activity by adolescents, which we know are not sufficient and we know need to improve, and sport can help reduce costs in this regard. So how do sport and dev, what is our role and how do we support this? We're a global platform. We've been around since 2003, and we serve a wide sort of global user base from across the world, sharing knowledge, building good practice, and creating partnerships very much aligned with the work of the SDN Sport Development Network. And we do have evidence showing, again, that the work doesn't just exist online, but people are using this in their projects and programs. We've got a website, which is what we're best known for, and we encourage you to take a look at this and use this. It's available, and everything is free. Everything is open access. We believe that knowledge should know no boundaries. It's available in English, French, Spanish, and Arabic. as part of our work on reshaping sport and development, to make sure that the voices of actors in Francophone Africa, Latin America, the Middle East, and so on are better recognized in a more equitable sector. And we've developed a number of resources, which I'll run through quickly, and happy to share this presentation afterwards. But it's a website section on sport and the SDGs, a website section on measuring the contribution of sport, breaking down these complex concepts into real measurable and actionable outputs that people can use in their work. Developing guidance for sports policy, not just for policymakers and government, but anyone involved in sports policy, whether that's a safeguarding policy at your sports club or it's a national policy for your country. And we will soon be launching, in collaboration with the Commonwealth, a sports policy hub on the website where people can come together to share learnings and exchange. The other thing I would say is we do need more research, but at the same time, often we don't need more research. We often need to better advocate for policy change with existing research. And we know that sport can be a cost-effective tool in reducing health costs. We know that physical activity and sport can keep young girls in school, which is a protective mechanism. So how do we advocate for policy change? How do we advocate for sport to be better recognized in health and education and humanitarian assistance? And research, we do need more research sometimes, but actually often we need to use existing research to advocate for how and why sport can make a difference. This doesn't mean it can automatically make a difference. This doesn't mean it always makes a difference. And we should always be cautious and careful of evangelizing sport, because sport is not perfect and sport can do harm. But in certain ways, sport can make a real difference. And so we are on a project with a number of universities where we've produced a few resources on how one can advocate for policy change at a local, national, and global level, so that sport, as I said in the beginning, can play a greater role in the global agenda, in national agendas, in local agendas, in better serving society. We've also developed an open access research library, which would be great to talk more about the SDN network, where we've got a range of 800 resources, which you can filter by SDG, by sport, by region, by country. So if you work for WHO or you work in Africa, you can filter this by your region, your SDG, or your theme, with tools and learning resources. And the same goes for all other content on our website. This could apply to news, events, jobs, and opportunities as well. And as Lynn mentioned, we've run quite a successful massive open online course. This is free. It's open access for everybody in 4 UN languages. So, we've had people do this who are beginners to sport for development, to people who've been working in sport for development, or, in academia for years. It's in partnership with Australian government and Commonwealth, and we've had about 10,000 people from 200 countries. And finally, we also did a hybrid version of this with the African Union, where we brought together senior policymakers from the African continent together with the AU, who then have taken the learnings from the MOOC back to their countries so they can better implement sport and sport for development in their policies and programs. So as I start to wrap up, and thank you again for your time. There are a number of different ways you can get involved with sport and dev or benefit from these resources. We exist to serve the community, for the community, and with the community. So you can register on our website as an individual, as an organization. You can submit your news, your information, your jobs, your opportunities, your research, if it's relevant to the sport for development sector. You can do this in multiple languages and contribute to help us shape a more diverse, more inclusive, a more equitable, and a more democratic sport for development movement that better reflects the voices and views of those across the world, especially in the global south, where the need is often greatest and where many leading sport for development programs have actually taken place and still do to this day. So to conclude, and unfortunately I will have to leave after this, my apologies, I'm actually at another conference in Cape Town, South Africa. I would love to stay and be part of the discussion, but Lynn will stay on, and I would be happy to be involved with such great follow-up speakers, Ian and James and Richard. But I will leave it here and say that, sport for development's grown rapidly in the 21st century. It's a range of challenges and a range of opportunities. The SDGs have provided a common framework for action, and many actors have aligned their policies, their programs to these frameworks. And other frameworks like AU Agenda 2063 or the Olympic Agenda. And sport can contribute to the SDGs. There is evidence of this, though with some limitations. We do need more robust evidence, but we also need to better use existing research to advocate for sport's role so that sport can be more formally recognized and used in the next global development agenda, the next national development agenda in your country, the next regional development agenda, so we know how and why sport can be used to better serve society, not for sport elitism, not for sporting excellence, but to contribute to health, education, social inclusion, and many other goals, which sport can do if used in an appropriate way, designed, delivered, and measured effectively. As they say in South Africa at the dawn of democracy, when Nelson Mandela was freed from prison, Sekunjalo Kenako, the time is now. We have to meet the moment. We face a global aid crisis. There's a risk that sport and sport for development is relegated, to use a sporting metaphor. But now more than ever, we need to show why and how sport does not automatically, but can make a difference in society to other domains such as health, education, and sustainable development and peace. Thank you so much again for your time. Thank you in the official languages of my country. And it's been a make a difference in society to other domains such as health, education, and sustainable development and peace. Thank you so much again for your time. Thank you in the official languages of my country. And it's been a pleasure to be